This is going to be under our ethical will chapter there. When something's not right, okay? This is a review of Wade Mullen's book, Wade, Wademullen, Something's Not Right. And decoding the hidden tactics of abuse and freeing yourself from its power. It's talking about institutional abuse. So you want to pass on these ideas to your loved ones and your family. And as we bear our burdens together, we become, life is a lot easier. And we're stronger. And if you'll see, this is from America, and you'll see that eagle in many of the early images in America. You'll see that eagle, and you'll see the eagle holding several arrows. It's easy to break one arrow, harder to break several arrows. And as we join together in a community, we can do much better. This is all about image management. There are PhDs in communication style, particularly image management, and we are being managed. That's the premise of this. And the ethical will is a way to hand down to the next generation, to teach the next generation, to give the values parents have to their children when you have active interference, particularly in some of our base communities, for example, like church, a faith community like a church. So that's what this is about. Let me begin on the commentaries. Wade's work in communication theory is a must read for survivors, institutional leaders, and everyone. In a powerful, easy to grasp book, Wade dispels the strategies and communication tools abusers use to manipulate, abuse, and resist accountability and transparency. Understanding these dynamics empowers survivors to recognize and name what they have experienced, and empowers all of us to identify and stand against abusers and abusive organizations. Reading this book and evaluating leaders and ministries with this knowledge will change you forever for the better. Now that's Rachel Den Hollander, speaker, victim advocate, and author of What is a Girl Worth? My Story of Breaking the Silence and Exposing the Truth About Larry Nassar and USA Gymnastics. And I think that had something to do with Michigan. So, this is not a self-help therapy book. Just hang in there, listen to it. And we're going to go a little bit deeper. Let me take you through this a little bit. See if this is my gain of function. And so you can follow me along a little bit. It's like let me continue. Something's Not Right is a beacon of truth and wisdom for the abused and a help in their healing. It is a warning about power mismanagement as well as a guide for eradicating evil from our churches. Wade Mullen's expertise provides a window into the insidious language of abuse and impression management strategies so often present among church leaders. This is not even a paginated, it's just before you open up the book and it's there. So, we're in America. It's 2023. And I have experienced betrayal. Others that I know of experienced betrayal by institutions that have been the foundation of our Western civilization, the culture. So you begin to look at that. You begin to share that experience. And you have the family that's under attack. You have the fatherhood of God under attack. You have the idea of a nation state under attack. And you see that in a breakdown of tribalism. And you'll see, when you see tribalism, and there are a couple of, I just don't have their names, but there are a couple of people who have taught at the War College, have taught the three-letter agencies, they're individuals, and they are now running think tanks. The question becomes, when you get into tribalism, which is a precondition was the state of affairs before there was a nation state. And it gets into geopolitics. I'm not going to go too deep into this, but the idea, have you seen things happen in the news where individuals have no compassion for someone outside their tribe, outside their group, their town? And Western civilization comes along with a nation state, concepts like truth, justice, fairness. We pick that up in the schools when you're fair play in sports. So we're going to talk about one of the symptoms. I think it's a good book, but it's not the kind of book that you want to read. You think you're going to be on the couch in the therapy. No, it's not a self-help book, but it does empower you, particularly when you go to the church, the foundation of the church, and people who are incompetent end up in positions in churches specifically, in government, and you see an inversion. We begin to see that where people will explain there's a race, and the focus is on the winner, and not the other 10 people run a marathon and they focus on the winner, and that's a bad thing. You should focus on the other 9. Well, that's an inversion of this competence that we want. You want to go under the knife on heart surgery with a guy or gal or whoever is the most competent. So remember, they're eroding, they're sucking the oxygen right out of the air, and you don't even know that, of your children, okay? So if you're parents, this is important for you. So I'm going to go slow here because I don't know what I'm doing. And I want to gain a function. Whoops, we lost something there. And so I just lost the screen. I thought I could keep that going forever. I have to fix that. So, but I'm pumped, and I'm going to go at this. So let me continue. Something's Not Right is essential reading for every leader. Wade Mullen brilliantly unpacks the game plan organizations often use to manage their image in a crisis. And he's going to go through his experience in his church. And to self-preserve at all costs. That's what I've experienced. I've experienced it, and if Teresa were here or Bill were here, I was shocked that in the church, parish that you build, that a younger generation of leaders can come along and preserve at all costs their image and abandon people. And just shocking. This book will change the way you see and think about abuse forever. So you begin to think about, well, wait a minute. This is not an isolated incident. When you say to somebody, and I'm Catholic, you say to somebody, and I'm a lawyer, you say to somebody, well, there's some institutional corruption there, they'll say, but you're the only victim. They have a counter. They have a counter to every argument. What? They will not admit, they will not deny, but they'll say, well, you're the only one that's troubled by this. They will isolate you. So watch what Wade's talking about. So this is a review. Wade Mullen has uniquely identified the hidden behaviors of abuse and has demystified the tactics used to hold victims in silent captivity. His research and voice have been an essential component of my own healing journey, as well as a pathway forward in dealing with organizational dysfunction. His work is a useful tool for informative and transformative introspection for victims and organizations alike. This profound work offers a path forward, a path toward authentic forgiveness, healing, and freedom. So I just want you to remember that we're Americans. I'm speaking to worldwide. Evidently, there's people all over the world. But America, in our foundation with America, we had our founding leaders and our founding colleges were founded around faith, Christianity, believers. And from the pulpit, people supported what were considered inalienable rights, but it was self-evident. There's a thing called truth, and there's a thing called justice. And they were called the Black Robe Regiment. They were called the Black Robe Regiment. You don't hear a lot about that. And the University of Michigan was in part founded by a preacher. You have all of this, and I think of it as a piece of Swiss cheese, bored away by people who are intellectuals. And now I'm focusing on, there's politics and things, but I'm focusing on the university that are, my main focus is on the protection or offering parents a sword and a shield to protect their kids, their children. And oftentimes, behind the backs of parents, intellectuals, elites will begin to bore through and turn into Swiss cheese things that we thought were absolutely rock solid. So, it's intentional. It's according to plan. It's not a mistake, and you begin to go through a phase, well, maybe they're making a little mistake here. No, it's intentional. So let me continue. And then they manage that image. Hidden behaviors. Wade's work is essential reading for our growing understanding of toxic and abusive systems. His deep experience and profound insights will provide clarity for those who are confused and pave a pathway for a necessary reckoning and the ultimate healing we long for. You want to have a better future for your kids. Now, in his book, Something's Not Right, Wade Mullen brings insights, research-based knowledge, and clarity to the heavy topic of abuse. His years of work provide readers with a language that gives voice to those who have been silenced by abuse. That's exactly what I found. So that's why I encourage the ethical will, and I encourage people to consider, parents, that they will try to silence you, and they will try to make it a linguistic community only for the experts. Well, if you're hanging here, and I'm going to get better. I'm by no means competent, but I'm going to get, the job will teach you how to do it. Okay? And we're going to lift that. It's a worthwhile burden to lift abuse. And when you catch them and you confront them, they're not prepared for that. I've experienced that, and I've been able to teach others that. You don't need a PhD to have common sense. Let's continue. The language that gives voice to those who have been silenced. Give witness. Sometimes you just have to present yourself at a meeting. Just a voice to say, I don't agree with you. Let me continue. He unpacks a vocabulary that can help individuals identify and articulate tactics abusers use. When I said that abuse is a linguistic community, and I hope you'll pick up on that. Well, he vulnerably shares, and he's talking about his own a journey, and again, talking about his own journey that happened in church, and how they managed the image, and he was just shocked. So, he's working on his PhD program at the time, and he begins to collect this, and this is the fruit from what I've gathered, my comment on it. You can read the book yourself. He gathers it. While he vulnerably shares his own journey of navigating abuse, he also provides a stunning picture of hope for the reconciliation and restoration that is always possible. See, in our experience, and remember, we're building community. And we're like, if you're like the immune system, okay? So, in the Bible, it talks about you got to be careful about pulling the weeds because you pull the good plants out too. So you can have a bad pastor who's surrounded with family and friends. So, and they put that, just like in the war where they'll have women and children in front of them. The bad actors will come at you. They'll put the women and children in front of them. They know what they are doing. They're surrounding themselves with your loved ones so that you then you can't take a straight shot at them. That's a tactic. And you got to be on the defense. That's a tactic. Well, there are some answers to that. But if you experience that, you're not, because you've experienced that, you're not, if they try to say, well, you're crazy or you're not smart, it has nothing to do with that. It's what you witnessed. Let's continue. And it's nice to do this in twosies and threesies because it can be a difficult process. So And this book is a must-read for those who have navigated abuse, anyone who helps survivors find healing, and leaders who steward churches and organizations that want to safeguard their cultures and systems from abuse. And we do. That's exactly the effort here. Now, when you go to psychology, they'll tell you, people will say to us, well, we're angry. Well, that's considered a negative, not necessary. Thomas Aquinas talks about justified wrath, and there's some good, but think of that science in psychology has mapped circuits in the brain. One of the circuits is anger, and it's considered a negative emotion. Do you know that they mapped a positive emotion? It's called disgust, and it looks the same as anger. But disgust goes way back. It's as if you walk through a swamp and you come out of the swamp with, some bloodsuckers on your legs, and the mother's disgusted by seeing her kids with that. That's disgust. And so when they say that you're angry, they're trying to put you on defense. You may be disgusted, and that's a positive. It's like coming across, it's for adults, I put this out for coming across a decayed body. Law enforcement, you've showed up, and particularly with newer people who the body almost looks like it's undulating, it's moving, it's got so much flies on it. You got a hamburger hanging around. That's what a human body is after 2 or 3 weeks after a suicide or what. Not a nice thing. The stench, a disgust. The nostrils close. It's a physio-psychological response, meaning it goes way back in the brainstem. It's part of what I would go back to as the structure of reality. So you are not crazy, you are not stupid, you are not foolish, and they want to silence your witness. And again, there are some, I believe, can't find it because it's getting difficult to, I think it's been sanitized off, but there are some PhD programs, I thought, or candidates on witness literature, the power of witness literature, the power of a Solzhenitsyn, the power of the witnesses coming out in the Yad Vashem of World War II in some of the prisons. I'll continue. I first met Wade Mullen where this book begins during his first steps of a journey to understand and free himself from an abusive church and its leadership. In the time since, I've witnessed God's voice speaking through Wade to research, identify, and call out abusive systems and to advocate for victims and survivors. You notice that how he said, journey to understand and free himself? Part of the problem is getting people to look and see. It's very difficult. Something's Not Right offers a balm for the abused, a platform to hear their stories, and a pathway for the church to stand by their side. If you are a victim of abuse, this book will identify the tactics of manipulation and misuse of power you have suffered from, giving you a language to name and confront that sin. I like that. A language to name and confront that sin. If you are a pastor or a Christian leader, your eyes will be open to the overt and nuanced ways abusers sow deceit and doubt in you, co-opting you into silence, often unwittingly, at the very time victims need to speak truth and be the comfort of Christ. At the very time victims need you to speak truth and be the comfort of Christ. This book offers you a glossary to discern and steps to address the scourge of abuse. Now, I think it was during the 60s, 70s, and 80s, we've captured KGB agents, and you debrief them. And when we have debriefed them, some have, weren't captured, they defected. And they defected, they were, how do I say this? They become Christian, and they have a faith. And they begin to tell how they were tasked to undermine the values that we have in America, the values about church, family, and how equality. There is no equality in truth. They said, 2 + 2 = 4. Nobody ever dies for that truth. But Jesus was God is a truth that people were died for. They would die. They were put to death for not giving up their belief in God. In fact, do a squirrel alert. I'm going to do a digression. Thomas Szasz, a Dr. Thomas Szasz, S-Z-A-S-Z, Ideology and Insanity. And I don't think it's the same today, but in the early days of, and that was a required reading for all psychologists back in the day, Ideology and Insanity. You were considered insane if you believed in God under the canons of communism in the 40s and 50s, and probably the 60s. So remember, what we're doing is going back to your ethical will, because family is everything. You're wanting to pass, you want to be strong in that, and people have infiltrated the church and tried to undermine one of the pillars of Western civilization. Church is upstream from culture. Oftentimes, it's one image. You don't have to agree with this, but upstream, and it brings in the values, the value of life, the culture of life, versus, and when we say culture, a culture of life and a culture of death. What are the values? For our purposes, we define culture as the hierarchy of values a society has. What are the highest values? Okay, and so in a culture of life, life is up there. In a culture of death, expediency, utilitarianism, all these other isms. And so if isms does not have a face and does not offer hope, I want to argue that. You have, I'm speaking to Christians, those who could potentially be Christians or believe in a God. We believe in a person, Jesus Christ. He has a face and he offers hope. The isms don't. There's no face in an ism, so be careful about that. Now, he unpacks a vocabulary that helps individuals. You restore. Let me continue. I first met Wade where this book begins during his first steps of a journey to understand and free himself from an abusive church and its leadership. In the time since, I've witnessed God's voice speaking through Wade to research, identify. I got to watch this. I'm reading and not watching that. To it and there. In the time since, I've witnessed God's voice speaking through Wade to research, identify, and call out abusive systems, and to advocate for victims and survivors. Something's Not Right offers a balm for the abused, a platform to hear their stories, and a pathway for the church to stand by their side. If you are a victim of abuse, this book will identify the tactics of manipulation and misuse of power you have suffered from, giving you a language to name and confront that sin. If you are a pastor or Christian leader, your eyes will be open to the overt and nuanced ways abusers sow deceit and doubt in you, and co-opting you into silence, often unwittingly, at the very time victims need you to speak truth and to be the comfort of Christ. This book offers you a glossary to discern the steps to address the scourge of abuse. Okay, these are all, I'm skipping the names of these people. That's exactly what I see. Many people, sow deceit and doubt in you. Okay, so what you'll see on our channel oftentimes is one or two voices. We try to be the voice. We're being the voice of others. In fact, this whole presentation here is something that's offered to you, was encouraged, and is being supported by those who have, I don't want to say co-opted, that have sponsored, for lack of a better term, that's not exactly right, men who were offered priesthood, should have been ordained, and were not ordained because they were offered it on condition that they not speak truth, and they not speak about the abuse of the Catholic Church, and not speak about keep your mouth shut or you won't be ordained, okay? So it's the aggregate of what we call Father almost ordained, all right? And we're not letting, and they can still be hurt, and those who are ordained in the Catholic Church, they have mothers and they have parents, and they can often be hurt. So they want to do things, and they have to be very careful because it's like a soldier. They can take you out, but oftentimes there's collateral damage, and you have to think about that. So it's not in isolation. It is intentional. It's not incompetence always. So in in the Catholic fold, I like to think of it as this. You have wicked shepherds, wicked priests. You have those who are malevolent, may not be wicked, but they will dig pits in your path, and they will be, they're not nice people, okay? And malevolent. They will do bad things. And then you have those who are incompetent. They are incompetent. It's much like a woodcutter that goes out into the woods and cuts down a tree. And then that woodcutter doesn't have the gift to form the tree into a piece of wood that can later be carved into an image, that can later be painted. He doesn't have the ability to paint the eyebrows on a beautiful wooden statue. That is, people can come to church as spiritual leaders and be limited in their ability, and they have to remind themselves in their formation process that maybe at best they're woodcutters, okay? They're woodcutters. They cannot develop people beyond what they have. Very difficult. That takes humility. I continue. Wade Mullen is one of the most important voices in evangelicalism right now. I'm Catholic, so for all those non-Catholics, I've heard your voice, and this is an evangelical right now. His experience and research into Christian institutions and how they can and do enable abusers is vital reading for anyone who wants to be an advocate for survivors or to gain an understanding of what makes so many of us culpable in protecting power. Isn't that so true? Culpable in protecting power. We experience this. I have experience where believers, non-believers, Catholics, non-Catholics come, and there are culpable means guilty, but it's a more precise term. Makes so many of us culpable in protecting power, and oftentimes that's done by silence. Okay, and let me give you another squirrel alert here. World War II. Some of the stories coming out of World War II is when the Americans came across the concentration camps. One of the generals, I'm not certain which general it was, I should know that, I did know it in one experience, would make the surrounding townsfolk come in to the concentration camp and help clean it up, bury the bodies, pick up the dead, and they didn't want to. And they were asked, did you see the smoke? Nope. Didn't you smell anything? Nope. Knew nothing about it. Did you see the trains arriving? Nope. That's what we mean by culpable. Where is that at? Culpable in protecting power. They knew nothing. And in fact, they were overheard saying, as they were walking through the camps, that the Americans were monsters the Führer was right. The Americans are animals, monsters for making them look at that. You see that? They don't want to look at that. Making them look at that, meaning the townsfolk that were living their life right next to a death camp did not want to look at it. Culpable in protecting power. Mullen uses real stories, extensive research, and genuine truth-telling to highlight what is possibly the most pressing issue facing the church today. How can we stop the epidemic of abuse within our sacred institutions? And then these sacred institutions help shape and form culture. And so if you can get that right, there's squirrel alert here. And this is my arguments with atheistic Marxists. You cannot, my assertion is 2 or 3 points for you parents to know this. You don't have to be an expert. You can't have a good medical delivery system without good individuals. You can't have a good legal system without good individuals. You cannot have a good educational system without good individuals. Meaning this, that you cannot create, Marxists, you cannot create institutions that are so perfect in and of themselves, it does not require the attribute of good individuals. Where do you get that goodness at? We as Christians believe it comes from outside the system. It comes from God, that attribute of goodness. So you cannot create a system. Again, create the system so that it's so perfect in and of itself that it is a good system. That attribute of goodness comes from humanity that goes into that system. That's fundamentally different from the thought process of Marxism. That's why if you have three guilty people and they don't know which one's guilty, they have no problem killing them all, okay? Because they are interested in, the focus is not on the individual, not on the justice of it, but the societal responsibility they feel, okay? It's different. Let me continue. Mullen offers us a sincerely thoughtful, incredibly practical, and truly compassionate book on abusive systems and consequences of cover-ups, full of relatable examples and opportunities to tend to one's own pain from abusive systems while leaving room for self-evaluation. This book holds up an overdue mirror. Mullen vulnerably relates to the reader, offering us a glimpse into his own experience with toxic leadership, and moreover equips us to recognize patterns of organizational abuse and what repentance actually looks like in such instances. I cannot recommend this accessible book. It says patterns of organizational abuse and what repentance actually looks like in such instances. I cannot recommend this accessible book strongly enough to anyone considering leadership in the church, society, or politics. I will be making it a required reading for teams and organizations that I work with going forward. And that's powerful. Considering leadership in church, society, and politics. Very powerful. And it'll make it for a better world for your children as you begin to discern that there are people who manage images and are not interested in truth. And it's not a fight for, it's like high noon, where somebody's got to meet the train, where the bad guys are coming to the town. In America, we have the black hats and the white hats in the old westerns, and the black hats are coming into town to do evil. Somebody's got to meet that train. It takes courage to meet that train. I think that's called high noon. So that's the comments on the book, and I have, with my gain of function, I hope to bring in Teresa, and I'm starting out very slow so that others can incubate others to just voice. Start with your voice. It's simple. Don't pay attention to who's listening or what. You have the courage to speak the truth, be a voice. Use prudence. Use prudence, because it's been our experience, church leaders will hurt you. Church elites will hurt you. And so what we do is we have identified people who are retired, people who are terminally ill, lawyers, cops, law enforcement, retired, are good voices, and they can take the hits. And they will come in and they will articulate and advocate for a cause. Simply want to say, this is it. Sometimes you get a lawyer to just use the office as a mail drop, okay, and use a return address. When you write to bishop or you write Rome in our Catholic experience, and you protest. But when you protest, they want to know who's behind you. And you don't necessarily have to tell them that. And so when I'm saying it, use your voice, but be prudent. It's okay to have a group of people come together, but you don't have to let them count you, okay? You don't have to let them know how many you are. Well, there's 42 of us. They don't know. And we're not going to let them count. And because they tend to cherry pick, and they will retaliate. And these are people who are infiltrated. Somehow they got into a community, into a leadership, what do they say? That there's a deep state in the church. That's them. And they often don't share your values. They do not share your values, but they will mirror and they will look like they do. And you want to test the spirit. So that's something's not right. Here's the author's note. The stories in this book were gathered in the course of my own experience, interactions, and academic research. Some are composites. All are based on true events. Names and exact details have been changed to protect the vulnerable. So when I say use your voice, again, I want to say to you that if there's mothers and parents of priests, the priests have been abused, and when the priest speaks up, they get set aside. You can begin to look for people that you have confidence in. And again, my experience has been medical people, legal people, cops, people who are condemned men have no fear. People who are terminally ill have said, "Hey, I'll sign that. I'll sign that petition complaining about that priest to the bishop or to Rome. I'll sign that complaining about that financial abuse." You're allowed to do that. You're allowed to think in terms of strategy. But your voice is go in a room and begin to talk to yourself. Talk in the mirror. Begin to articulate some thoughts. That puts the fear of God in many individuals. Part of life is just showing up to life and being visibly present. And in our Catholic church, that is a ministry that the Carmelites do. They're visibly present, and oftentimes there's nothing to say. They're just visibly present. These are the friars, the Discalced Carmelite friars. They're available to approach them, but they're visibly present in many circumstances at monasteries, outside the monasteries, and they're just there during certain times if you want to approach them and ask them for questions. Otherwise, they're standing or sitting, praying and meditating, but they're present. You want to be visibly present if you can, and that's step one. I'll fine-tune this. I have experienced things and been a voice for others. So you use your voice. You can voice the concerns of others, and you'll find that many people, when you begin to compare notes, they manage image. So you'll see one person, a deacon, who's honored in a very privileged position, and then pretty soon when you, in a secret life, in a different circumstance, is in one day is feeding the poor, the next day is preventing people from giving food out to the poor. I would say that's a little bit of a problem, okay? That's what I'm talking about. So I'll get better at this. And you watch this gain of function. I want to encourage you right now. I'm like a dinosaur coming to this technology. It will improve. The job will teach you how to do it, okay? So, but determination, being determination is a word that Teresa of Avila would use, okay? She's the first female doctor of the Catholic Church. And determination, and it'll work out for you, You don't use the right. Another thing they will say, I'm talking about when they say that the church leaders in the Catholic Church could be a priest, a deacon, or one of their staff. Well, you didn't pronounce that word quite right when you're at what's called the amble, when you may be getting ready to do the readings. The Catholic laity will participate. Well, you didn't pronounce that way. Listen, some of the words that people have come to me and they get a little tender, that had nothing to do with the way you were pronouncing it. They want to demoralize you. They want to take your confidence away. And I say to them, so you were there when they decided how to pronounce that word? They didn't invite you or they didn't invite me. You were there at the beginning of the world? You just, potato, tomato, tomato, come on. Remember. And these people become very hypercritical of you when you begin to voice. So I'm encouraging you to voice. Like a doctor saying, listen, you got to stop smoking, you got to diet, but do it with moderation. And at the same time, because I don't want you to stop doing it, I want you to do it. It's therapeutic, the way you do it. If you got the ability to do it, do it. But be smart. Be smart about using your voice. But you got to move in that direction. You got to meet the train. Somebody has to do that. Christ was not just a preacher teaching, he confronted evil, okay? And that's not easy. And that's where, what's my little, for those in law enforcement, you know, they're either, one way to think about law enforcement is they're either coming to somebody who, a person in trouble or a person causing trouble. How about that? So they have a good experience in their careers, person in trouble or person causing trouble, and those values don't end at retirement. So I'm at 40 minutes, and I really could go on, and I don't know about the thought process. I'm going to go on a little bit because I can. Forward. Something's not right. How many of us have had the uncomfortable awareness that something was amiss, but had difficulty articulating exactly what was wrong? When we cannot find words to label what is awry, our discomfort may lead us to deny that a problem exists. In doing so, we risk an aftermath of self-blame. Something was not okay, and I share the responsibility of having allowed it to happen. That's the self-blame. Let me continue. Dr. Wade Mullen is a trustworthy guide in such matters. He knows the way because he has been there. He knows that when something is not right, there are often people who want us to think we are not right. They may seek to convince us that our thinking is off, our labels are wrong, or our imagination is running away from us. They may exclaim, "You need to trust us. We will fix it." They may warn that we risk destroying the godly work that has been accomplished by giving voice to our concerns. Wade knows what it is like to be seen as a threat, to be silenced and pushed aside. He understands what it is like to have people authoritatively switch all the labels in order to cover up wrongdoing. Having our experience negated is both disorienting and isolating. It is confusing. At times like this, we need courage. We need a map, and the signposts along the way need to be true. Not only has Dr. Mullen been in this murky land himself, but for his doctoral dissertation, he studied over 1,000 cases of abuse in churches and the methods used by those institutions to cover it up, rename it, and deny it. He gives names to grooming techniques used by those who abuse their power. He exposes the silencing technique used by individuals and systems to keep truth from coming to light or being believed. He brings to light the deceptions, the twisting of words, the manipulations that silence people and shift blame to those who expose abuse as if they and not the abuse were the actual threat. Wade teaches us about impression management, tools and strategies for managing what others see. These tools have been used for centuries to confuse, mislead, and cover up actions and decisions that are destroying precious people created in the image of our God. Knowing well that abuse silences others, Wade has stepped into the light and given voice to many silenced and wounded people. His signposts are clear and true. He understands the internal experience of confusion, the silenced voice, and the changing of labels such as the bad is named good and good seems bad. He has gathered up his own painful experience, wounds, and confusion, and through them he brings empathy and clarity to others. He calls things by their right names. This process often brings great grief because it entails seeing things as they are, as opposed to how we hope they would be. Truth, however, also brings freedom. The light is on, our labels are correct, and we then move forward toward greater strength and the healing of wounds. So read, listen, and apply these concepts to yourself first, and then to those situations you face that are abusive, confusing, and hurtful. By reading and learning what Wade has to teach us, we will be safer for each other and carry a greater likeness of the one we follow, who said he himself is both the truth and our refuge. That's Diane Langberg, Langberg, Ph.D., psychologist. That's the foreword. And we have the introduction, something's not right. Prior to that, in the book, it has these little sayings. So I'm going to give you this saying, and then we're coming up on the 45-minute mark, and I'm going to conclude. Here is the saying: you think evil is going to come into your houses wearing big black boots. It doesn't come like that. Look at the language. It begins in the language. Joseph Brodsky, Brodsky. Let me repeat that. You think evil is going to come into your houses wearing big black boots. It doesn't come like that. Look at the language. It begins in the language. Joseph Brodsky, that's a quote. Isn't that powerful? You look at what Canada, they have laws that would put people in prison if they don't use the right pronouns. Criminal violations. Jordan Peterson, I think, lost his job, that psychologist, author in Canada. Think if you're a tough guy, but think of his wife and his kids. I mean, think of the fallout, the collateral damage. And that's why situational awareness in society, pilots, law enforcement, medicine, law, politicians, they have situational awareness. They're good people to develop and to form. They're good people to leave the community. But they're the first ones that evil will try to corrupt, in my opinion. I just love that. Let me continue one more. Saying, you think evil is going to come into your houses wearing big black boots. It doesn't come like that. Look at the language. It begins in the language. Joseph Brodsky. And I don't even know who he is. I should Google him. I'm going to conclude there because the next is going to become a number one. And the reason I'm going to conclude there, it's easier for me to do these at long stints at a time. But we're at 47 minutes. I have to upload this. And I only have 1 or 2 bars. And I think I can... I got to figure out a better way to upload because I'm going from my iPhone to I have a cloud. But I can go to the iMac. Maybe it's faster there, or I can move to where there's more than just 1 or 2 bars, and that would be to walk over to the office, and it's late at night. All right, let's conclude with a prayer. The prayer that Jesus taught us. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, now and forever. Amen. I had that on for the Catholics and the Christians. I have friends, they say, you're Protestant? No, Mike, we're Christians. All right, my friends. And I want to thank our sponsor, and aggregately, they are known as Father Almost Ordained, for the men that were offered ordination if they would shut up on condition. They were offered to be ordained to proclaim the truth as long as they agreed to lie, and they declined to do that. Very powerful. And so I call that aggregate, but I think that this book refers to him in a better way. And he talks about how he changes. What does he say? Some are composites, all are based on true events. So some of the personalities are composites. Some of the Father Almost are composites. All are based on true events to protect them. Some of them were not ordained. Some of them have been ordained and been dismissed from the set aside. And some of them have mothers that are in tears and can't do anything, because if they do anything, they'll jeopardize their son, who hopefully can come back in to the Catholic Church or into parish life. So we deal with that. We have in our group people who will hear the cries of distress. And it's natural law to have screams from torture. It's part of natural law, and cries of distress. And remember Auschwitz, Langsberg, I think that's another one. I might have that wrong. Many, many in our lifetime, in the lifetime of our parents, in our generation, evil has reared its ugly head. And so this is an attempt to strengthen family, strengthen parents, and their bonds with their children. That's the intent. And the power is that the voice is used. The voice is used. And you're not responsible for the effect of that. You're responsible for the being faithful. Speak the truth. Be faithful. You don't know if it's going to happen in your lifetime or the lifetime of your children where the fruit will come from. And we see that in the founders of religious orders in the Catholic faith, where they put together the founding constitutions, the founding teachings, with that very concept that it may not have full impact until centuries after their death. So, but 2 plus 2 is true. There's no equality in truth. Jesus is God. People died for that truth. Nobody dies for 2 plus 2 is 4. Okay? 2 plus 2 is 4. It's not 5. Nobody dies for that. But they do die for certain truths. So remember that. There is no equality in this world. Amen.